Welcome to today's panel discussion brought to you by the League of Women Voters Education Fund. Today, we are discussing voting rights for individuals who are in long-term care facilities or who may have disabilities. I'm Deb Burton, the Executive Director of RI Elder Info, and today I am joined by the experts, Rob Rock, Deputy Secretary of State, Joanna Petrarca, Deputy Director of the Board of Elections, and Kate Bowden, Senior Attorney for Disability Rights, Rhode Island. Welcome. Thank you all for joining today.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with you, Rob. Would you please share what measures make voting more accessible to individuals with disabilities and in long-term care residents?
Great, thanks, Devin. Thanks for having me. Obviously, we've got a really big election. As in this election year, we want to make sure that voters have the information they need to be able to cast their ballot. And there have been a few things that have changed over the last several years to make voting more accessible to folks who are in long-term care facilities and also with voters with disabilities. And the first couple I want to talk about are the online mail ballot application. So for the first time in a major election, voters can apply for a mail ballot online. So they don't need to print out a form. They don't need to deliver anything. They can fill out the form online and submit it online, which is great, much more accessible for people. And for the years before that, people have also been able to update their voter information online. So voters that move can update their information much more easily than they ever have before. We also have several ways that voters can vote by mail and in an accessible way. For example, you can use what's called an electronic mail ballot, where voters who are eligible, those that are in the military, those that are overseas, and voters with disabilities can have a ballot sent to them electronically. They can open their ballot using the link that we email them. They can mark their ballot using an accessible device, a screen reader, a sip and puff, what have you. They can securely sign that ballot and send it back to the Board of Elections, all from the comfort of their home without having to visit a polling place, because we know that for some voters, it's a hardship to visit polling places. So this electronic mail ballot, again, very secure and is an accessible way for people to cast ballots. We also allow folks to request a Braille ballot. For those that read Braille, we can create a Braille ballot for them and mail it right to their house so that they don't need to leave the confines of their home and they can vote using that Braille ballot. We also have a tactile ballot, which allows voters to mark their ballot using a series of raised bumps we provide a CD with the ballot so that folks can hear what's on the ballot and they can mark their ballot as the reader reads their ballot to them. And then finally, we have a large print ballot option for voters who may have visual issues. They can get a ballot that's a little bit bigger in font to make it easier to mark. So all of this is available to people. It's also available right up until Election Day. Obviously, the sooner you apply, the better. But it's important that we provide that accessible option for voters.
That's amazing. So for the ballots that can be cast online, what is the level of security for that to ensure that that ballot being cast is not intercepted by a ne'er-do-well?
Yeah, great question. So back in 2022, when this legislation was passed, there was concern about the security of this method. And so the legislation requires that there has to be multiple independent security reviews on the portal that we decide. We had to go through an RFP process, and it was our office that had to make sure that we made sure that it was secure. We worked with our partners on this call, the Board of Elections, those in the disability community, to ensure that we had the best option possible. And we selected a vendor who is the most well-known in this field. They have contracts with the Department of Defense and other federal agencies. They also are required to go through multiple cybersecurity trainings to ensure that their portal is as secure as possible. So, and we're not an outlier here. There have been dozens of other states and counties using this same exact portal for years. And this is going to be our first major election where this is taking place. And we did it in the presidential primary and we did it in the statewide primary last month with no issues whatsoever. But we've been watching this very seriously and carefully to ensure that this is the most secure portal we can possibly have for our voters.
That's excellent. Now, how is someone's identity confirmed either at the polling location or online if, for example, they don't have a current driver's license or ID card?
Sure. Well, so for voters who are voting by mail, whether it's the online portal or using the paper ballot. And by the way, that online portal is only available for voters with disabilities and military and overseas voters. But voters who are going to be voting by mail, they have a signature verification, not a photo ID verification. So when before their ballot is even open and counted, the signature on the ballot envelope has to match the signature that's on file for them by the Board of Elections. So that's the signature and security match on the mail ballot. And for voters who are voting early or in person, they do have to provide a photo ID, and there are several IDs that are acceptable: a Rhode Island state ID or a driver's license, a military ID, an ID from an institution of higher education, a bus pass, a medical card. Any of those things that have a photo on it is what's acceptable at the polling place. And for most people, when they provide their driver's license or their state ID, the poll worker simply scans that ID using the barcode on the back, and the information appears on the electronic poll book, which makes the check-in process much quicker than it was back when we had these giant stacks of poll books where poll workers had to thumb through thousands of pages to find the voter's name. So it has gotten much more efficient and much more accessible for not only voters, but also poll workers.
That's good. I remember those 3-ring binders that there used to be, and you'd have to flip it. And so that kind of brings me to Joanna from the Board of Elections. How does the state ensure that the poll workers are equipped to handle individuals who may have disabilities?
Thanks, Deb. Thanks for having us. And I have Charlotte Larendo with me.
Hi,
Charlotte
Charlotte.
actually administers the program for the nursing homes for the Board of Elections, and she's been doing so for many years. So we do train the poll workers, and part of the training does explain to them how they should deal with voters with disabilities and how they should always put the person before the disability. That's something that we've worked closely with Kate Bowden from Disability Rights Rhode Island, as well as the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. We also encourage everyone, not just voters with disabilities, to use the Express Vote machine, which is, as Rob identified, is a ballot marking machine. There are several features. If someone is blind, they can use the audio feature on the machine. They can also make the letters on the machine bigger if they need help seeing. So there are plenty of ways. And again, during the poll worker training, we do go over how to better serve folks with disabilities.
Excellent. And if someone needs assistance, say they need a personal care attendant to join them as they go to the voting booth, is that something that is acceptable? Are the poll workers trained for that?
Yes, they are. Not just for folks with disabilities. Anyone that needs assistance marking their ballot, they can certainly have a person of their choosing or a bipartisan peer at the polling place assist them, but they do have to complete, if it's a person of their choosing, as long as they're 13 and older, they do have to complete that voter assistance form.
Okay. Oh, I like that. If they're younger than 13, great way to help educate our young ones on the importance of voting. So for individuals who are in long-term care facilities, assisted living facilities, nursing homes, group homes, how are those individuals able to vote?
So they can request mail ballots. We typically send out a package, and Charlotte, I'll let her elaborate a little bit more on this. Sometime in July, we sent out a packet to all the nursing homes and assisted living, but it's mostly for folks that are unable to get to the polls, where we go out as bipartisan peers. If they're in an assisted living facility, they can simply request a traditional mail ballot where the bipartisan peer doesn't have to go out. But for those folks that do require assistance in completing their ballot and need their ballot brought over to their facility, we send out a package in July to all of the directors of all of the nursing homes in the state and assisted livings, indicating to them what the process is and how they should request the mail ballots, both for the primary in the case of this year and the general election at the same time, so we don't leave anyone behind. And then we are here to assist with any questions they may have or any concerns. And then I'll let Charlotte add a little bit if she has something to add.
Yes. When our bipartisan pairs go out to administer ballots, one of the first things they do upon entering the facility is they meet with usually the activity coordinator or the activities director, they're sometimes called. And at that point, the activities director will let them know how many of the registered voters that have a ballot there, how many are able to come to the location where the voting will take place. and how many our bipartisan pair might need to go and visit in their rooms. So we do visit patients that are bedbound or for other reasons are unable to leave their quarters. And we go into the resident's room with the activities director or that person's assigned helper. And everything is witnessed by the facility and by our bipartisan pair. And that's how we assist them.
And just for clarity, for folks who may not know what bipartisan means, could you just elaborate what a bipartisan pair means?
Yes, we hire people to do this job that in most cases are either a registered Democrat or a registered Republican. Occasionally, we will have bipartisan pairs where one of them will redeclare as unaffiliated. So, but if that happens and we catch it, which I do go on the CVRS and I check these things frequently. But when that happens, if it's very late in the day, we do allow them because I can look at their record and I can see which way they lean. And if I have a Republican and an unaffiliated, and all of a sudden they're voting Republican, I have to change that team and find someone that is unaffiliated that leans Democrat or a Democrat. And we always try to have it be a Democrat and a Republican.
Excellent. So that way every side is equally weighted by the individual who is bringing the ballot to the resident in their rooms.
Yes.
Okay. So if someone has perhaps only recently entered the facility or perhaps is in the hospital, is there a way for them to get a ballot on a short notice if necessary?
Well, this happens to us frequently. We'll have a team go in to administer, let's say 50 ballots at the Rhode Island Veterans Home. And of those 50, they might see 45. And one might be out at a doctor appointment. One or two may be in the hospital. And what our pairs are instructed to do is to not automatically assume that, oh, this person's not going to get to vote. They will make phone calls consistently trying to determine is Mr. Smith back from his adventure? Is he back from his doctor appointment? Is Mrs. Smith out of the hospital and back at the facility? And they will keep trying until they are able to help the voter to be able to vote. Or in the case of the patient doesn't come out of the hospital, then that's handled a different way, and we're not able to have that voter vote. But we do everything possible that we can.
Excellent. Now, are family members or facility staff able to actually write out the ballot for the individual, or does the individual need to be the one communicating who it is that they would like to have the ballot marked for?
Yep. So it depends. If the voter wants their family member to assist them, that is fine. That wouldn't be any different than having a voter assistant at the polling place. But it has to be the will of the voter. That's the most important thing. And we do let the workers at the nursing homes, as well as the family members, if they're present, know that the voter has a right to privacy. Just because they're in a facility, they're in a different setting, doesn't mean that that right to privacy goes away. So we make sure that the voter is aware, and then if the voter desires to have a family member help, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, but nobody can just collect a batch of ballots, fill them out willy-nilly. That's
No.
all resolved. Okay.
Correct, because the ballots don't get dropped off to the facility. I know that sometimes that's a little bit of a misnomer. People think we do that. Charlotte, so let me step back a little bit. When we sent that packet out to the nursing homes, they then put in requests for mail ballots for those voters that would like to receive a ballot. Those applications go back to the local boards of canvassers, they process them, and then the Secretary of State will get the mail ballots to our office. And then Charlotte will hand them over to the bipartisan peers. Each peer gets assigned a different facility. they will go out and they will bring each voter, they'll set up appointments with each individual voter through the facilities, the activities director many times. And then they will meet, our bipartisan peer will go and deliver that ballot to that voter, give them the privacy that they need. Should they need assistance, a lot of times they will ask the bipartisan peer to help them. But again, that is the voter's call. And that's the most important thing that I'd like to get through it is it has to be the voter's desire. We don't treat a voter any different at the nursing homes than we would in the polling place.
I have one more thing to add. If a family member wants to monitor the voting process for their relative, they are not allowed to say, gee, Mom, you wanted to vote for so-and-so, right? They're not allowed to use verbiage that might be deemed as influencing. They're only there for support.
Got it. So no verbal cues among any witnesses, any assistants, no verbal cues from the bipartisan team, none of that. So once a resident has marked their ballot with the individuals that they are choosing, what are the next steps to ensure that that ballot remains secure?
Do you want me to take that?
Yep.
Okay. When we administer the ballots, for example, they're coming in for training on the 17th, which is Thursday. When they leave, they will leave with their, we call it it's a blue bin. Inside the bin is a bank bag, a rather large bank bag, and the bank bag has supplies in it. Once they go to a facility and they administer ballots, then that bank bag, which has a lock and key, is used to transport those ballots from their vehicle into the facility and then back. And the two ways that we get the ballots returned to us is every bipartisan peer has within that blue bin 5 to 10 gray bags. And the gray bags are used to return the ballots to us, or they can be returned to their local board of canvassers, where they have a form that is used that they fill out to say who they are, where they went, how many ballots are in the gray bag, and it's the chit gets a signature on it, and they are left either with me here at the Board of Elections or, as I mentioned, at the local board of canvassers. So they are not floating around anywhere.
No, and I'd like to add, what Charlotte is describing is the chain of custody. So there are chain of custody forms. We do account for every single ballot that we receive from the Secretary of State and that we then administer, whether it's voted or not. There is a chain of custody that must be followed, and we account for every single one of those ballots.
So all of those ballots are indicated as going out with the bipartisan pair with items that will lock those ballots to keep them secure. When the resident completes it and they sign the envelope, do you have a way of being able to match their signatures to ensure that it's the resident that completed the ballot and signed the envelope?
Yes, they go through the same process that all of voters who do a mail ballot. The ballots are returned here to the Board of Elections, and they are processed through the Fluence machine, and the signatures are verified the exact same way.
Mm-hmm. Is that verification done by a person or a computer?
Yes. Yeah, so once it goes through the Fluence machine, that's just to get a scan of the oath envelope where the signature is. And then humans, a bipartisan peer will compare those signatures, as Rob mentioned earlier, to the signature on file for the voter. So if the voter has several signatures on file and one of them matches, then it moves forward. If there's discrepancies and the bipartisan peer doesn't agree, it goes to a second set of bipartisan peers for a second review. And this can actually make it all the way up to the Board of Elections at a public meeting if we can't agree that those signatures match. But they must match. All of our employees here, even our seasonals, do go through signature verification training. Most of them have completed it to date in preparation for certification of mail ballots.
And so that way, if someone has had a medical condition such as a stroke or something like that, the individual can still cast their ballot. It might take longer to verify their signature is what I'm
Yes.
understanding.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. And if there's the question, then it can escalate up to the Board of Elections, correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. So Kate, I wanted to ask, can you explain what rights individuals with disabilities have when it comes to voting?
Absolutely. We touched on the right to assistance, and I want to add a little bit to that. So at the polls, a voter has the right to assistance, and they can achieve that in 3 different ways. They can bring the assistant of their choice. One caveat is that that person may not be from their union or their employer. So when they arrive at the polling place, they will be asked to fill out a form. It's called an affidavit of assistance, where both individuals basically promise that the voter has not brought someone from their union or their employer. And the role of the helper is to assist with marking the ballot. That they may read the ballot, they may mark the ballot. They're not there to assist in making decisions about who to vote for. So when we're at early voting or the polls, the voter has that right to the person of their choice. They can ask a bipartisan pair of poll workers for assistance with marking the ballot, or they can use technology, assistive technology called the Express Vote. And that was mentioned earlier. We've worked hard as community partners to educate about the Express Vote. And there is a new video that the Secretary of State's office has available, which describes the Express Vote. It is a ballot marking device, so it marks the ballot for the voter. The way that they vote is not kept or on the equipment. It's simply basically a printer. And the Express Vote enables a person who is blind to vote privately and independently, because the machine can read the ballot to the person and then mark the ballot. Also very important with voting is that voters should verify their vote. So, we should all be looking at the ballot to make sure that we've marked it the way we wanted to. And there is a way for a person to do that with the Express Vote as well. They can reinsert the ballot, and the machine will then say, this is a voted ballot and this is how it's voted. And that is how voters, even if they can't see, can have confidence that their ballot has been marked appropriately, and then they've been able to exercise their right to vote privately and independently.
Excellent. And so if a voter perhaps has some physical limitations and something gets marked, maybe they were a little shaky from, say, Parkinson's, and it was not marked in the way that was intended, is there a way to have that individual with a differing ability perhaps revise that to correct something that may have occurred in error?
Right. So if a voter is a little shaky and maybe makes some stray marks or is not able to fill in the oval in the way the machine can read it, what will happen is the voter will put the ballot into the ballot counting machine called the DS-220. If there are stray marks or the marks aren't perfect enough, the machine will not accept the ballot. It will kick it back. And at that point, the voter would have the opportunity to fix the problem. And I would recommend at that point, they may want to be thinking about trying the Express Vote instead, or getting assistance if they have difficulty with marking the ballot.
Excellent. Now, if someone is born with some type of disability, whether it is, say, for example, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, a chromosomal abnormality, do they still have a right to vote?
Great question. So the law is that eligible voters can vote. So you have to meet the eligibility requirements of Rhode Island, being a resident, being old enough, and have an address here. Beyond that, we do not take away the right to vote based on disability alone. So in order for a person to lose their right to vote, there would have to be a court decision on this. There would have to be a written court order stating that the person does not have capacity to vote.
specifically to vote?
Right. And so this is because in medicine, in law, in science, we recognize that a person can have differing capacity. I may be in a facility or long-term care and not be able to meet my I may not be able to do laundry anymore. I may need help bathing, but I still have a strong view of who I want my leaders to be. So mental capacity is, we call it issue specific, and it can fluctuate. So in order to lose that right to vote, again, there has to be a court order specifically stating that the person lacks capacity to vote.
Excellent. And so individuals, say, for example, with a cognitive impairment such as dementia, they can vote?
Yes, they can vote if they can make a choice.
And an individual who may have a mental illness and be receiving treatment in a psychiatric facility, are they able to vote?
Yes, they are. There is actually very specific state law which says just being in like a state hospital or a state psychiatric facility does not take away the right to vote.
And if someone is under a guardianship, can they still vote?
In most cases, yes. It goes back to the guiding principle that I articulated. If the guardianship order is silent on capacity to vote, then the person can vote. So in order to lose that right to vote, there has to be a court order which says this person cannot vote. And again, it's the guardian may not vote for the person that they are a guardian of. The term is ward, the ward. So I've had some people actually recently call and say, I'm my son's guardian. He doesn't understand the process, but I feel that as guardian, I should be able to vote in his best interests. And what I explain is, I can understand why a guardian would feel that way. However, our law does not allow for a best interest standard for voting. It's the right goes to the voter, and the voter must be able to articulate a desire to vote and make a choice. And so there can be people who seem very disabled. For example, someone who is called a shut-in, someone who is not able to speak and is communicating through eye blinking. There have been over the years a few individuals who were able to communicate with the world through eye blinking. And if they can make that communication about wanting to participate and make a choice, then they are able to vote.
Excellent. Now, are facilities able to refuse to allow a resident the right to vote?
That should not be happening. If they meet the eligibility standard and there's been no court order, folks in facilities should be given the opportunity to vote. And there's some great resources on how to do this well. The American Bar Association has materials on working with voters who have cognitive disabilities and doing so in a way not to influence people. So there are resources for facilities that can really assist with this.
That is awesome. And for everyone, how do you all collaborate to ensure voters with disabilities or who are in long-term care are fully enfranchised?
Well, I'll start from our end. A lot of the laws that have passed over the last several years related to voters with disabilities has always been done collaboratively. By nature of the way that Rhode Island elections are set up, our office, the Board of Elections, and the 39 cities and towns always work together on all election matters. And then for specific issues and legislation and policies, we make sure that everybody who's affected has a seat at the table. There have been several task force that our office have put on over the years, and we always make sure that the task force have people on them that are going to be affected by whatever change is coming down the pike. And so I quickly talked about the electronic mail ballot application portal, which we had several folks from the disability community that helped us make the determination on who to go with. When we purchased the express votes back in 2016, we made sure that folks who are going to use the express vote, folks who need the express vote, we're the ones helping make that decision. And I think it's really important that no matter what we're talking about, that people who are affected have a seat at the table, even though they may not be able to vote on certain things or what have you. And I mean vote as in like through the legislature, not vote for candidates. But it's important that everyone's voices are heard. And I think that the way Rhode Island elections are set up, it's really, we have no choice but to be collaborative. But it's really great that we have great partners on this call and beyond to make sure that voting is as easy and as accessible for people as possible.
And how about you, Joanna?
And I'd like to add, Rob is absolutely right. We work so close together with the Secretary of State's office, with the local boards. As a matter of fact, I just received an email from one of the local boards letting me know, hey, by the way, someone applied for a Cat 2 at this facility. So if that's not already on your radar, which it would be, but this is how collaboratively we work. We also work really closely with Disability Rights Rhode Island and the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. For example, when we have to go and inspect some of the newer polling places, we will invite them along so that they can give us their perspective as well from a disabled person's point of view. So we do really like to work with our partners, and we'd like to incorporate them to make sure that, as Rob said, we are giving every single Rhode Islander who has the right to vote the right to do so, irrespective of their disability.
And Kate?
I would say some examples. Every election season, I attend poll worker training so that I understand what's going on from the perspective of the Board of Elections, and I provide technical assistance to the Board of Elections about disability issues in the poll worker manual. We just worked on the Express Vote video together, and I go out with folks from my organization in collaboration with Common Cause Rhode Island and the Governor's Commission to survey polling places on election day, so that if something comes up and a polling place has some sort of a barrier, we can get those addressed, hopefully on the day if it's feasible. So those are, and also we, Disability Rights Rhode Island worked very closely with the Board of Elections to do online training for people, the staff in long-term care facilities, about the process. So we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate, and I feel that we're doing well as community partners to elevate access in Rhode Island.
This is just absolutely amazing. I love how everyone is working together on this. Joanna, I had a question. Once the ballots are cast, whether that's in a facility, by mail, at a polling place, is the public able to observe the process of counting the ballots?
Yes, they're also able to observe when we are comparing the signatures. They can actually, we do post that on the Secretary of State's website. We post the dates that we'll be doing that, and folks are welcome to come to the Board of Elections and observe. When we're counting the ballots, when they're being certified, we have the DS-850, which is a high-speed a tabulator. They can witness that process, and again, they can witness while we are also verifying signatures.
So everything is fully transparent except for the individual who is casting their ballot. They have the right to privacy the same as everyone else. And if they need assistance, that's okay too. Now, if anyone watching has a question, is the best number for them to call the Secretary of State the 401-222-2340?
That is the best way to contact our office. I know cities and towns all have phone numbers to their local boards of canvassers, the Board of Elections certainly as well. But our office number is 401-222-2340. Also visit our website at vote.ri.gov for all election information that you need.
Excellent. And folks can always call 211 if they have questions as well. I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you, Rob and Johanna and Charlotte and Kate, for providing these valuable insights on the rights of voters who are in long-term care or who have a disability. Thank you, of course, to the League of Women Voters for their educational fund, for their support enabling us to bring this discussion to you. It's clear that ensuring full voter access requires collaboration, innovation, and continued advocacy. Let's continue working together to make sure everyone's voice is heard. Thank you all for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.